Next ages.
I didn't get an email, man.
But even like that photo there, which is held.
Haere mai. Me miki ana kia whakakatoa. Nō reira, tēnā koto katoa. Pohihiri, o rārama, o te whakaaro, o te tangata, o te aroha. Te pō e hiri nei i a tātou. Māori ora ki a tātou. Haumi e, hui e, taingi e. I'll put the glasses on for the English version. It's very small. May clarity be yours, may understanding be yours through reflection, through personal endeavour, through respect, the virtue that binds us as one, well-being to us all, bind us all together. Ngā mihi nui.
Kia ora.
Welcome everybody to 26th January Thames Coromandel District Council meeting. We'd like to confirm those present, and I'm not seeing any absences, so do we have any apologies that I'm not aware of? There being none, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. There is no public forum at this meeting. This is a meeting for decisions on specific items. The forum will be held at the next scheduled ordinary meeting in February. I think it's the 21st of February. Are there any items not on the agenda that you need to add?
Can I just clarify then the reason why there is no public forum? Is that unusual? Is it?
I think the meeting was originally designated as a workshop for councillors to work through some stuff. Then, because we are time sensitive on a couple of issues, in particular the waste minimisation plan, which needs to go to public consultation, it was designated a full council meeting so that we could get that out for public consultation. So it was not originally a full council agenda meeting. Okay. Are there any conflicts of interest that anyone needs to clear? There being none. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the council submission on the Natural and Built Environment Bill and the Spatial Planning Bill. And could I get a mover and a seconder to receive the motion, please?
I'll move it.
Delhi and Robin, thank you. And we have Leslie is here. We've also got Emily Fortin and Susan Henderson online. Hello, welcome, thank you. I'll hand it over to you, Leslie.
Yes, I'll start off.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. What you've got before you, as you recall, we had a workshop about the proposals from the government for amendments to the resource management system that we've got currently. And Susan and Emily led us through that workshop. We have put together a draft submission based on the feedback that we received. And we've also looked at other draft submissions that have come from the sector in putting this together. So the covering report just outlines basically the background to this, and then provides you with the topics that are covered in the substantive submission. Topics, objectives of the reform, the purposes of the two bills, the outcomes-based approach to the system that's proposed, the national planning framework, the regionalisation and plan making in those RPCs, regional planning committees, and then some comments about the preparation of those regional spatial strategies and the natural built environment plans. The opportunity for local voice that you're concerned about. Some comments on the independent hearing panels, bylaws, activity, and on something that's pretty locally based and of interest to us, which is the agriculture provisions. And then the overall funding and resourcing concerns that we've got. So we look for any comments from you. on any changes that you'd like to see, or any comments around additional items that you might have missed, that you'd like to include. Emily and Susan, anything else that I've forgotten to add?
I know that's a good summary, Leslie, but yes, happy to answer any questions on the draft submission.
I have one question, but before I ask, is there any other questions or any other discussion on that, Peter?
Section 3.13 on page 14 of the. Can you just give me a little bit more colour behind what just, I think what it's saying is the representation on the RPC should only be elected members. Just what's the thinking in all that?
It's about your function as elected members and your representation of your community on a panel and committee that is making decisions that will affect your community. And it's about having a say where the decision making is being made. There's quite a lot, I understand there's quite a lot of debate about the proposals in the bill currently about this part of the bill. Maybe Ellen could speak to that a bit more.
So 4 minutes ago, I got an email through from GNZ and they've got some feedback from the sector around their draft submission. And one of the points of contention is when the regional planning committees are constructed, what's the requirement for the membership? So TCDC on behalf of the district gets to put forward a member onto that planning committee. And so the debate that's happening in our sector at the moment is, should that be an elected member, i.e. is this a policy governance role, or should the council be able to appoint an expert that's not a staff member onto that committee and therefore sort of turn it into more of an expert and less of a representation type membership? So that's, I guess, the question for discussion.
I think that's kind of where I was going, but that's helpful. On, you know, whether the sorts of things that we've been discussing and debating, whether it does require expert.
Well, there's always expert, I mean, in the same way that you've got staff to give you advice on expert matters here. That committee, I dare say, will have quite a lot of expertise wrapped around it. So the question is exactly as Amy said, is this a committee that's representing the views of the various parts of the region that have been pulled together into these plans, or is it an expert committee?
So is it, through the chair, is it more strategic? So having that elected person on there, is that more around representing the strategy or the spatial planning, but
Representing the communities and what they desire for the spatial strategy.
Is it governance?
Is it governance technical, or is it
Yeah.
technical?
We probably have our views we can share if you want them, but this is a matter for council.
So I will come to Terry, but Peter's essentially asked the question I had about representation of TCDC on that committee and what is the proposed makeup and whether the door is still open to have not just elected representatives, but elected representative and somebody with technical expertise. Why not two? I don't know whether it's going top heavy or whatever. So.
Well, as I said, my view is that there's always technical expertise wrapped around these committees, the governance, if they're a governance kind of body, like as a council, you've got us.
But I guess if the
Question is,
regional,
with these RPCs, what are they? Are they
Yes.
a technical group?
Yes.
A technical working group to put together these plans, or are they actually a governance?
yes, and the question is, if the meetings are held in Hamilton, for example, if you've got decisions that need to be made by elected representatives at the meetings and there is not the support of the technical or our people there at the time, does that leave a gap?
So if we just think about the function of the committee, you know, it's the committee's there it is effectively a decision governance entity because it's there to sign off the content that's created by the independent hearing panel, I think. So what happens is our entity puts somebody on that committee. That committee is made up of one of every council plus some community representation and potentially some central government representation. And they appoint an independent hearings panel that work with the technicians to create the plan for Waikato. And that plan is then brought back for sign-off at the regional planning committee, and thereafter we all own it. So it is the point where that plan is adopted for everybody in the region. So in my view, it's clearly a governance role, but there's a bit of a push and pull around. Is the system now so complex that it has to have technical skills sitting in those governance roles? Is I think the tension in the sector.
So through the,
Sorry, just Terry first and then we'll come to you, John.
Yeah, so just going back to that, so I think it's a governance role. Do you think that will be a recommendation across the board? Or are you expecting all those different councils to come up with their own version of what they see?
My feeling, and this is only feeling, is that many of the planners across the country are concerned about the quality of the membership of those planning committees, and I suspect that's where the push for the skills is coming from. My view, after many years of experience in this, is that it is a governance role. It has to be accountable, and it is accountable, and ultimately, every 3 years through an election process. In my view, it's clearly one of those roles. But I think the sector will be split over based on experiences they've had.
The question becomes for me, if that RPC doesn't have a governance role, where does the governance sit?
Yeah, where's governance? So I just want to talk quickly about this very comprehensive submission. You make some really interesting comments, around the fact that maybe you say that in 3.2, however, TC is concerned, the new resource consent management system proposed in the bill will not meet the government's objectives, because quite strong statements there. So there's obviously a lot of concern from from your side of it about how this is going to be implemented. So good to see that coming through. And really, it talks about 3 councils starting this off, or 3 areas starting this off. Have they picked those areas? Have they got any idea where they are?
That's a good question. Officially, no, but I suspect they already have. One of the other questions coming through from LGNZ is actually this staged implementation is a problem. And so the pushback is that actually we should be doing everywhere at once, but then that creates a resourcing problem that follows. But so if we do it in tranches, then I've got a fair idea which councils are sort of being looked at before the first tranche. But if you think about us and Auckland and think about the Harrop Gold, that's split between 2 regions.
Yeah.
And can you imagine how that's going to operate when one region's under the RMA and one region's under the new legislation? And just all the consultants trying to work across the regional boundaries, there's a whole lot of complications with doing it in tranches. But on the other hand, there's a whole lot of challenges in doing it all at once as well.
Yeah, so, and they talk about 10 years to implement this. So, it's maybe not been in our watch, it might be in another person's watch. So,
When we know how long it took to pull the RMA right through.
so who's going to speak to it? And who's going down?
We've got Lynn as the person making the submission.
Are you going to speak to it, eh?
It hasn't been decided yet.
I recommend we speak to it.
You need to make it.
I'm certainly not going to read it on my own. The words a little bit out of depth come to mind, but so I would need to.
Okay, so, yeah. Good luck.
John, you had a question.
well, a question and just a general comment around the whole thing. So well done in regards to the work that's been put into this. It has been really very thoroughly completed. So and timely, and my involvement has also been through the civil defence group, where I've been on the subcommittee looking at the implications of the changes to the RMA, and words that Lynn just uttered, like out of one's depth, is probably very appropriate comments in regard to it. And thank goodness we had a lot of expertise and specialists in that area who could help and guide that. And what it shows me, and this document, is just how widespread this change actually is and how transformational it is. And that brings me into the point of my concerns just about the rate of the degree of change, the amount of consultation that has taken place with potentially impacted people and groups. And, you know, whether that is something we should be making a stronger point of within this, that we, because of the implications that this has both on this district and the people that are in the district, that there should be wider consultation and more time to really understand fully, particularly from a governance point of view. And I just sort of challenge anybody around the table to just ask themselves the question as to whether they understand fully what this will mean in regard to a transformation of what change will be taking place over the 10 years. And, you know, I would actually like to see something stronger in what we're putting in around this, and to say that maybe at the time that central government are now taking a bit of a breath and looking at what their focuses are, as to whether this should be slowed down a little bit to be able to give more time for greater consideration.
I think that's a good point, John, but if you tie that in with what Aileen says about the staged transition, where you've got parts of the country in the RMA and parts under the new regime, and potential for complications.
It just heightens my concern, those things. And, you know, I know that there's a clause in here with the recommendation that there be a delegation to the mayor and to the chief executive to be able to look at changes. That concerns me not from any lack of support for the telling you for the widespread ramifications of this, and the responsibility, I think, on the wider council to be across it and to understand anything that might change within what is being proposed.
Thank you. Delegate.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what John said about this piece of work. It's absolutely amazing and very thorough. And I'm particularly, the things I want to highlight is local input iwi, which you've flagged, and I think that is really significant if it's aligning with, you know, more mana whenua involvement in this sort of decision making. That regional spatial planning and how that fits in, and what the timing is on that with our region to fit with this, and what the timing of the implementation is. So we've just talked about, we're not quite sure where it's going to sit. And I'm also aware with new Prime Minister Hipkins that there could be some tweaks to Three Waters and other legislation policy that's going through, and how responsive the question could be asked when you submit about, will we be able to resubmit if there's some major change in that policy? So if Prime Minister Hipkins comes in and says, actually, Three Waters is going to go this way slightly, or the RMA thing is going to go this way slightly, and it's very possible, do we get a second suck at the cherry to resubmit or modify our submission and represent it? So those are the things that are concerning me at the moment, but the work that is being done is superb. Thank you so much.
And there is a little bit of feedback that I've had that the changes that are coming through, or likely to come through, could quite possibly affect Three Waters, could quite possibly affect some other proposed legislation. It feels like RMA or this RMA reform is not going to be included in that. Maybe get there's so much uncertainty at the moment, but when Chris Hipkins was being interviewed the other day, he specifically mentioned 2 or 3 things, and RMA reform was not included in terms of let's have another look. As David Longing would have said, let's have a cup of tea. Most of you actually don't remember that. But, what it seems to be implying is time to have another look at some things, but it didn't feel like RMA reform was included in that basket, but who knows?
Who knows?
If I can comment on that, I think that there's both parties believe the RMA needs to be there. So I think that in itself will keep this train going, as opposed to the other reforms where there's a bit more opposition to it. But the problem with both of these reforms is that the operationalising it is where the challenges are. And, Councillor Grant here has just outlined the problem, which is that the Wellington machine has been moving the great rate of knowledge, talking to all the experts and probably some level of regional flow, but none of it's actually landed on the ground. That's the disconnect. So when we say to the Minister, our community are not feeling consulted by us, what he's going to turn around and saying, well, I sent a 533-page reform document to every elected member before Christmas 2019, so don't say you're not informed. The problem is, how do you take a 533-page document before Christmas and understand what that means? But the disconnect is actually on the ground, and particularly in this district, I've really felt it because I've been engaged in these reforms for several years now, and it feels like this organisation has been pulled towards the centre, but the community is pulling in the opposite direction without understanding how things in the centre landing are progressing and how far down the track they are. So I think there's a real disconnect between the legislation that's been driven hard and our communities, and that's been quiet.
When you say pull towards the centre, you talk about more regional planning, regional decision making. Communities are saying, well, hang on, we want more involvement in our own local decision.
We're losing our voice.
And that's exactly, sorry, through the chair, comment that I had is that the local voices, the community aspirations will really be lost in this. And that is what we're going to hear. And fantastic document. Thank you. Made it very digestible to go through this and understand. So thank you so much. But that's the overriding sort of feeling that I get as I go through this.
So is it the feeling of this council that message needs to go very strongly back to the submission?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Do that. Five. Oh, sorry, Martin.
Yeah, just one other point. So the RMA is has become a very complex piece of legislation over the years, and this is something that's going to replace that. And at the moment, I don't think the community really has, and we don't really have any idea about what effect, essentially this is going to have on someone walking in downstairs and saying, hey, I want to do such and such. And I don't think as elected members that we can become experts in these new bills. So we do have to rely upon what staff have said. But yeah, the real potential for pushback, as Aileen said, is going to be once things actually hit the ground. People are going, oh, gee, I didn't know I'm going to have to do such and such for something that I used to be able to do. This is supposed to make things easier. And I think that 10 years time frame might be optimistic for something this complex.
Does it follows the pattern though, doesn't it, of the original RMA? Because how many pieces of legislation were there originally before the RMA was introduced?
100 and something, 59 regulations.
Which were all complicated and varied by area to area, and then that was pulled into the RMA, but the RMA itself took, as you said, Leslie, a number of years to settle down, and I don't see this will be much different.
I can probably answer that question when someone walks into the front door, what happens? So under the new, so assuming 10 years passed and the new reforms are settled in, someone walks in the front door and says, I want to do X. We'll be pulling out a plan that doesn't really have our DNA on it. It'll be very much, it'll be the regional plan. The plan will have dropped out some rules and it'll be more generic. So the rules will be across the Waikato as opposed to some of the local stuff. And the way the reform is such that at the moment, the RMA says that if you can deal with the effects, then you can do the activity. What these reforms are going to say is if you're out of zone or this isn't envisaged, you're not going to be able to do it. So it's going to be more prescriptive and probably easier for the things that are envisaged, but probably harder for things that aren't envisaged. And we'll be picking that plan up and going, oh, well, here's the rule. doesn't really fit us, or it might do, but potentially it won't fit us and potentially we won't feel ownership of it. But we're then having to work to that rule and then carry out compliance to that rule that we don't necessarily feel ownership of.
Just, so as a for instance, have we any sense of the difference trying to get the Corpo Marine project through? We know what we had to go through with the RMA. Would it be easier?
That will all depend on whether it was envisaged in the regional spatial plan. If the regional spatial plan said we're going to do a walk, it might have been easier.
Likelihood of that is unlikely.
Unlikely. Yeah.
And the freshwater stands really kicking big time. So look out.
If I comment on that, too, I think there may be a benefit there in that the trade-offs can be debated in the planning level rather than on the ground.
Yeah, it seems if you get through the first stage, the last of it's quite easy, but getting through the first stage is tough.
You mean including plans and ambitions in the regional plan to begin with?
Yeah, when you first have the first discussion to find out whether you jump in the next suit, it's a bit of a hill to climb. And once you get through that, it's supposed to be downhill, but I'll see.
Any further discussion? Any other questions of Leslie? All right, if there be none, the resolution is that the lodgement of the council submission on the natural and built environment bill and the spatial planning bill has been received. We delegate authority to the mayor and chief executive to approve any changes to the draft submission prior to its lodgement with the New Zealand Parliament, and council's representatives to appear before the select committee to speak in support of the submission. We've noted the concerns of council. We can include those in the verbal submission. Is that fair to say?
I think Leslie was going to amend it based on the comments that we've heard this morning.
Okay, that is
Just
correct.
amendments to just strengthen some parts, on those particular matters that you've raised today, just make sure that we've got it right.
All right.
We can circulate it at that stage if you like, but we won't have another meeting that we're able to actually do the formal resolution. But happy to circulate it.
We're okay with that?
Yep.
All right, thank you. So, all those in favour of the motion? All those against? John?
Well, I might actually put mine as an abstain. I have to say this is like starting a 3-year course at varsity and you've got 2 days to make your mind up and sit your exam. It is just so complex. I agree with what John says. I'm just abstaining because I really am struggling to come to full terms with it. What would you say is the real big plus on this proposal?
None here.
It might make plans a bit more uniform across, so if you're a developer here and you want to go build in Manamanapiaco, the rules will be the same. And that's, they try to have a more efficient system. That's the purpose of it. I don't know whether they'll achieve their outcomes.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm feeling uncomfortable about it.
Yeah, and we stress that in the submission. This is a submission on a proposal from central government.
If we don't submit, we're having no say.
Yeah, I realise that, yeah, but that just adds a little bit of colour.
And it was but the motion was still winning, so we've got to
Through the chair, the reason that I am opposing it is for the reasons that I believe any changes to this document should be brought back to more than just the two of you. I think because of the widespread ramifications of this being a major, should be a wider group than just two people making their decision.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. What options do we have for making those amendments, recirculated to councillors and getting sign off on those? Do we have time? Do we not have time?
Are you making amendments?
Yeah.
You have-
Just based on what has been said about
Oh,
today.
yeah, just one said today.
So
But it's only-
you want us to make changes based on what's said today.
Yeah, today.
But it's only what we've said today, so
Yeah.
there won't be anything left field
Okay.
in the amended document, in my opinion.
The issue's a procedural one. What's the date, the closing date for submissions?
Fifth, everything.
So the issue for us is that we haven't got another meeting that we're actually make another resolution. So we have to rely on today's resolution, and you can either by committee make the changes for us and sign it off, or you can tell us, as you have done, what areas you want amended, and we can go and amend it. The problem is coming back for a resolution that complies with the procedure that we have to go through.
Through the chair, I think many of the points are raised in the submission. What I think is that we'd be tweaking the words to strengthen them. Wouldn't I? It's
Yes, no surprises.
Revisit of the submission at all.
We've had a clear direction from council that the loss of local voices and the pace of change and the potential for consultation, is that a summary, fair summary, councillor Grant, of what your concerns are? So we've had a clear message from our council that we need those included in submission. We can include that. What we can't do is get it back in front of the full council with the amendments. So what I think we need to do is put the motion.
Could I suggest a bit of a compromise? That's not quite right due process terms, but if we make the amendments, circulate it to you, and you can make any comment, and we'll take that on board. Yeah.
But
It kind of gets around it, but it's not.
it would mean that we've got to pass the resolution today, but on the basis that those changes are going to be included and circulated.
You wish, I think you've got a clear majority support here from the council to proceed, make those amendments, strengthen the document. It's a shame we haven't got everybody on board, but you have the vast majority to proceed with it.
Thank you, Councillor Morrissey. We have, but there was some very valid points raised, and I think it's absolutely.
Absolutely, and I'm comfortable with those points being strengthened and the document taken down with you and Aileen to deal with.
Through
So
the
you get
chair, I know
Sorry, just Rico.
we're in the process of passing the resolutions, but is there, can I just flag, is there sort of a piece of comms that we could do to the broader community to sort of give them a flavour of what's coming down the track? I mean, once you guys give your submission or even prior to, I know this is a public document and if people were looking, they could go and find it, but really sort of start signalling to our community that these will, you know, the way this operates will be very different. And it may not be now, but it's certainly down the track that we sort of incorporate in our comms.
That's a good point. Is that
Because it is going to be a big change.
is the time of the submission to the select committee, is that the time to do it?
I would think so, but
So we can tie it into the event of our council making a submission and including those concerns that we have.
Yeah.
So Councillor Walker, did you?
Oh, no, we passed the resolution. Do we have to do an amendment? What's the thing on here? We've actually passed
So
that.
no, we didn't get the final, we did get the final vote. We've got against from Councillor Grant, who's comfortable that you staying with that, and abstain from Councillor Gottlieb, you staying with the abstain. Would you like those recorded? Okay. So based on that, the resolution is passed. Noted that we will circulate an email with those proposed changes and include those in submission that is made. Thank you. All right, thank you, Leslie. Thank you, team. Emily and Susan, appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Item 3.1, out of cycle funding request for the 11th of November storm event. Can I get a mover and a seconder?
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
The motion is that we receive the upcycle funding request, which is in 3 parts. advised, if there was a word missing out of the original.
If by the the chair, the actual motion on 2 should read adopts option 2, fund initial response and permanent reinstatement works to return the network to its existing level of service at an estimated cost of.
Thank you, Ed. Now, can I just get clarity? You've said adopts. Should it be adopts or approves? Aaron?
Bruce.
So the motion,
The chair should.
the motion should be approves option 2, fund initial response and permanent reinstatement works to return level of service, thank you, Ed, at an estimated cost of, and then the costs are detailed.
I believe with the chair, in regards to me.
Couple more words.
So, yes.
Yeah, return the network to its existing level of service.
Return the network.
That's a phrase that what the Kotai like to see.
So,
Through the chair, can I just, sorry, just before we get into discussion through the chair. While we're working on the resolution, there's another change we need to make on the resolutions, and that's regarding the funding of this. So obviously we've had a lot of storm damage over the last little while, and you know, we have this kind of delay when we get approval to go and do the storm works. There's a delay to when it's actually going to be done once it's gone to market and everything flows through. So effectively, the disaster reserve is cleaned out. And so what we're needing to do is look at funding this from retained earnings, district retained earnings. So that would be a change to the resolution that gets noted here. So that's just a little last minute change. That is one of those challenges that we face around the timeframes and the delays around the disaster reserve, getting the work out, all those kind of things.
So Bruce, just to clarify, the resolution says at the moment, disaster recovery reserve, that'll be changed to district retained.
Correct. Yeah, that's the advice that we've that's getting from our colleagues in finance.
Through the chair. My question is, this relates to storm on the 11th of November. We have had subsequent storms and damage on damage. It gets extremely confusing, really, trying to, I'm sure more so for you than for me looking at it. The damage that you'd estimated for this particular event is probably downcreased or changed. How do you manage that across the various events, and what implications will that have?
Right, through the chair, what we do after each event is we carry out initial response. That's recorded on a case-by-case basis. For each of the typically dropouts or underslips that occur, which are the main causes of ongoing works, we do an individual assessment on each of the sites. Currently, over this financial year, we have 43 dropout sites that we're looking at. Each one of those requires a geotechnical investigation, design, and an updated cost from it. But we are getting fairly good at estimating what the actual costs are. What we do after each storm event is we run through what the true costs of the event were, update our methods of assessment of future costs. So whilst I can't say that I'm 100% confident that it would be that value, we are giving you the best estimate we possibly can. And yes, there are storm events in December, January, and we have another one predicted for this weekend as well. And so there will be future costs for and cycle budget for storm repairs.
That's all.
This is another one of those things where our options are zero, so it's going to be done, that's the end of it. But what I am concerned about is I can't recall ever before emptying out, it may have happened, our disaster fund money, we don't have issues there, and having to go into retained earnings, so that's sort of a person being a little bit worried. So we are right out funds, John, and we present disaster money.
Through the chair, the funds are still there, but they're committed from other storm events and still being submitted to work.
So the money there to do previous stuff.
Retrospective.
This is the first one we're going to dip into.
Yes.
How long does it take now for us to rebuild a disaster?
So that's a discussion for the annual plan and the LTP. That's looking on what, you know,
Decide how much.
decide how much we're actually going to put in that fund.
Mm.
That reserve and, we normally like to keep it at about 1.5 million. But with all the events that we've had over the last couple of years, and also with some decisions that have been made in regards to topping up of that reserve in the past, that's the situation that we're in at the moment. So we do have to, that is something we need to discuss or think about during the annual plan and LTP discussions.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, I'd just like all councillors to remember this discussion because I think it's inappropriate that we don't cater adequately for these sorts of disasters, and they're going to become more expensive and more common, more frequent, and we can't keep going to retained earnings to save our backsides like this. So, yeah, thanks very much.
Donna, is the disaster relief fund fully funded?
Yes, it is.
So just want to pick up on what Councillor Morrissey has said, which I'll do in a second, but Peter, you had your hand up.
So the proposal here is to use, we're out of disaster, so we're going to use retained earnings. Why are we not reusing retained earnings for the whole lot rather than loan funding the other ones? And secondly, when the next thing comes through for the December and then the ones through the January, are we going to be using retained earnings at all? What's the thinking? Have we got a limitless pot of retained
Isn't that
earnings?
a discussion that we have around the annual plan and the LTP rather than?
The next two events, not necessarily.
No.
Because we have a burning problem, don't we?
So through the chair, yeah, exactly what Amy just said. I think what we'll have to do is we'll have to have that discussion. We'll have to provide the options to you about how we fund those other two events. I don't think, potentially, depending on timeframes, they won't have to wait for the annual plan. So I think prior to the annual plan, we'll have the discussion we had about the disaster reserve, the topping up, as not mentioned. But prior to that, we might come to you saying, look, for these events, we know last one we did with retained earnings, just retained earnings, but these are the options for this one, or whatever. So I don't have an answer for you right now about how we'd actually fund those.
Okay, but it could be an option here to fund the 198,000 or the 57,000. One funded like you're proposing for the other two figures.
So, so through the chair, you could do.
Sorry, can I ask
That we wouldn't be able to because it's not right, it's not these costs.
Okay.
So we already have to have it all not operating.
Terry.
Yes, so I've just added up the numbers here, 437,320 is what we're going to pay, part of that deal. So I just want to understand about the permanent reinstatement. You say that if there's a blowout in a wall and they had to put another, or, retaining wall on, that they would do that to that standard again?
That's correct, yes.
Right. So the potential is if it happened again, I just want to understand, if we're spending this money, how structurally sound should we make these things? Is there any way of improving what we're doing out there? Or is it just patch up?
We are doing all repairs to current standards. They should have a 40-year nominal life. That's what the national standard is. We don't just patch up. We wouldn't get funding from the agency. We just did like a bodge up repair. So everything that's done is done to national standards. The level of service relates primarily to existing road width, that sort of thing. What the agency will make from is improving a single lane road to a 2-lane one. So,
Yeah, I didn't expect to see that, no.
yeah.
But if you've got a particular thing that blows out all the time,
Just
patching it up again for the next one.
We don't have a particular thing that blows out over every time. These sites are all individual sites, all separate.
I see some of these things on the side of the road, we're patching up the same spot all the time because they start falling away. And you go back again and they're falling away again. So they do get very familiar.
So through the chair, they might be sites where that's the best treatment at that time, you know, is that, you know, there might be the best treatment to do a patch up rather than going in and ripping the whole thing up. But I guess an example that what you might be talking about, Terry, is examples of drainage and stuff. So when we have to go and replace drainage, often, particularly on like unsealed roads, drainage was put in years ago that might not be up to like the current standards of what we use currently. So obviously, if we go back in to replace drainage, that will be replaced to the current standards, which take into account, you know, climate change calculations and additional factors and stuff like that. So there are upgrades done, but you know, Ed's point is right. Waikotahi have a pretty tight rein on making sure councils aren't going in and upgrading a whole lot of things.
Yeah,
but if there's obvious things that, you know, we're not going to go back and put something in.
Just to make a point here, so there's a piece of fallout on the road between turn off to Whangatara, between Whangatara and the turn off to State I 25A. And the rocks are all hanging out the side of the hill and it's just waiting to happen again. There's 3 or 4 pine trees hanging over the edge. And so how much reinstatement would happen on that? Would that just be putting a bundle on the bottom and carry on, or would that be some work on that side of that hill because they know it's going to go out?
Sounds like a Waikotahi problem that's on the state level. So I wouldn't really want to comment on how they.
Well, I'm just saying, is what would you do in that situation?
Oh, it's so individual. Every situation is so different. Geotech is something that, you know, you've got to have a specialist geotechnical engineer and team on site that are involved with that stuff, a specialist around software, a specialist around hardware.
Yeah,
so I totally.
So my point's getting to that we do this every year. Every year we go through this drama and it's nature we're dealing with, but we don't really fix anything to really future-proof it. And I'm just wondering if we're getting the right approach to these.
I understand what you're saying. What I would say is that all these ones that we bring to you for storm damage that we really, you know, that it brings through, they're different sites. They're not the same site. You know, we would have to notify you if we came and said, oh, that site we came and asked you about 2 years ago, that's fallen over again and we need more money. We're not in that situation. These are individual sites, and as we're going around the network, making repairs, these repairs are holding up.
Okay.
These are basically level of service continuations, aren't they? So if we were doing a level of service improvement, we'd be doing a specific business case to NZTA or additional funding for the component of it. And I'm sure you guys do that.
Yep, from time to time that happens, yeah.
So that's what I'm looking for. You know, we've got Waikato money to do things. Are we thinking about the long-term viability of these things?
We definitely are. I've talked a lot about last, but through the chair is that Waikato obviously don't want to throw away their money either. So if there's an issue where we keep going to them in a similar kind of area, they'll be looking for a better solution as well. They'll be looking at what we're doing to try and minimise expenditure over the longer term. So they're on that page.
I think I probably should make everyone aware that we've had some discussions already with the senior leadership team about collating some of the numbers and some of the damage that's been happening in the last probably 2 or 3 years. What I'm concerned about is that we have accurate figures when we go back to Waka Kotahi or central government for assistance with improvements, that we've got accurate figures on the picture as it has been happening and as the picture is getting worse, and it is getting worse. So what I've asked for is some numbers about events, costs. If we go back to 2017, 2018, we had storm events over those 2 years, which cost around $3 million. The storm events of the last 2 weeks alone have cost $3 million. So we are seeing, or are we seeing, this is what I want the information for, we want the numbers. Are we seeing an escalation in costs? Are we running out of money in our disaster relief fund? Well, we've had that answer today. So we've got to put the picture together and go to Waka Kotahi and go to the government with a very strong argument. We've already started that process. What I've asked for now is the numbers to back it up. And we need to be pushing pretty hard. We are, to my mind, we are one of 4 regions across the country, Northland, Marlborough, Gisborne, East Coast and Thames Coromandel, that is consistently smacked by these disaster events. And we need to be looking at long-term improvements. We need assistance and funding to do that. The team need to have the resources to do that. So let's make the argument, let's make it as strongly as we can. Yep. That process has already started.
Yeah, it's good information.
I wonder if we could get a resolution such that that action doesn't get lost, so we've got the actions today and
Good idea.
in our agenda, in our.
Absolutely. So which gives staff, all right,
the mandate to go.
the mandate to go and do it. So I wonder if we can get something worded up, which essentially asks for a collation of the number of events that we've had over the last 2 years.
5
Won't
years.
get those 2017 ones in.
2017 was the big one.
Could I just go back a little bit through that? So I think what we're going to find is this is cyclical. So some years it's quiet, other times it isn't. It probably correlates to the Southern Oscillation Index or something like that.
It's
But I think if we go back a bit further, then we can actually see what the trajectory is.
Yeah, I think looking through the data, so yeah, we take a look at, quiet years and then something comes back and, so we definitely has a bit of a cycle, it seems to be.
Well, we're just putting that together. Can I just ask a question around the State Highway 25 shutdown at the top of the hill, those cracks? Is there any comment you can make on that?
Through the chair, yeah, we wouldn't really want to get into one Kotahi's business on
I
that.
heard them on the radio last night,
Did you?
national radio. She was talking about it and she was asked some full-on questions and she's saying they could put a measuring thing right down and there's still the holes there. So it's a work in progress.
It's definitely, I would say it's definitely a challenging site. And I think that, those cracks are pretty decent sized. If you drove over them today, you would have.
So just what I'm asking you really is it going to be a period of time that you think extended over?
I would say so, yeah. It's not going to be a fast,
Not fast tracks.
Very challenging site.
It would be good to have some comms around that, because even, the neighbour came over for a beer and he said, what a joke. He said they've just painted over the cracks. And it was lovely when Ed was up in Whitianga last Friday to say, no, there's a bit of stopping water ingress there, because you don't want it coming in at the top as well as being unlined at the bottom. Public don't understand that. They've painted over the crack. And it never fails to amaze me how people will jump to whatever the organisation is, whether it's council or Waka Kotahi or a bunch of fools. Look at
So that's what we need, good information. So we've got some facts.
Yeah, we'll have a chat to what Kotahi and see if we can get
just
them to get a bit more context.
interact with the community a little bit more. It is a changing, evolving situation.
They were live on radio this morning as well, so I'm not sure.
Big traffic flows over there this weekend.
Well, the weather will deter, unfortunately, the weather will.
My daughter asked me to message her to make sure it got through safely and hadn't been caught in a landslide, so.
Okay, we're going to bring this back in line. Thank you. Where's my gavel?
You need to bang the table.
We've got the draft of an amendment to the resolution there. We've kept that non-specific in terms of time because that gives some. Will you include the 10 years or just keep it as
I'm
historical?
not sure how good our data is, how far back, so I rely on.
Maybe say up to 10 years, as far back as you can.
I take Ed's advice about what's reliable.
If I may move the chair, we can certainly find costs for storm events through NZTA's TO finance system. I'm not sure how far that goes back, but it's certainly 2017, possibly.
We just say historical and we'll just, count the data.
See what you can come up with.
Through the chair, time to know until we start looking back and see what potentially come out. But maybe a package of stuff we can bring in.
Thank you.
Would it make any sense to actually put alongside that why? why we're asking for this? Is the purpose of asking for this to then go to government to, because if you look at that and you just goes, oh, okay, well, we're just going to find out how much.
I feel like it's a little bit premature to go into that much detail. We want the information, we want to find patterns, we want to find the trends of where this is going.
Yeah.
And then when we bring that back to another meeting,
Okay.
I feel like it would be a little bit premature at the moment. And only because I would want that to be pretty strong, link.
And I guess by the following meeting, may have some more figures for this year.
I'm happy to have that change included in the resolution of last, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor.
So next thing we decide what we're going to set the rate for the disaster.
Councillor,
Is this just related to storm damage related to the roading network?
Yep,
good point.
that's exactly what I was going to say. Do we need the words
Right. Storm damage.
district roads or something like that in there?
So it would be district road. So really what I'm thinking of is any roading network that has a cost implication for council, which is district roads. So I'm guessing when it's Wakakotahi, there is no cost implication for us, or are there cost implications for us that I'm not aware of? So it's all Wakakotahi.
Will that roading network also include the footpath network? Your roading? And
Through the chair, the footpath network forms part of roading. There is.
so it just covers.
Good question.
Okay, are we ready to put the resolution in its amended form? All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next item 3.2 is the solid waste draft, waste management and minimisation plan. Can I get a mover in a second? Delhi and a second. Okay, the resolution is that we receive the draft waste minimisation management plan report dated 11th January and the independent waste assessment. We adopt a vision statement and we adopt a proposal to consult on the waste minimisation and management plan with public and local iwi from 3rd of February to 3rd of March. Obviously, timing is tight here, so there's not a lot of opportunity to make any changes, but the key things out of this are the vision statement and the adopting the plan for public consultation. Welcome, Mo. Thank you, Bruce and Anna. Thank you for all your work that's gone into this. I know we've had a couple of cracks at it. It's getting there. It's taken shape. I think we're at a point where we've got a pretty robust document. Any discussion? Billy?
Just a quick comment. I did make a note of that. You know, we've got the inverted pyramid there where it's redesign and at the top, and I emphasise quite strongly my desire to have the word refuse incorporated into, was it strong? Yeah, refuse incorporated wherever possible in that document. And I appreciate and respect the redesign aspect, but if we're an aspirational district, we could go down that pathway as discussed of no paper cups at all on the entire peninsula. Water fountains, you're working with someone like Veolia to have potable water fountains in towns and say, look, go to the tourism hub at Kopu and buy your water bottle and they'll pay you $3 deposit. When you leave the peninsula, leave it there. So I really want to emphasise that we want people's thinking to go from, oh, I can recycle this. It's okay buying bagged lettuce leaves because I can recycle it now, rather than refusing to buy products so that you don't even create a waste stream.
Yeah, I think it's through the chair. I think it's important, I suppose. And again, I'll just, and I might want to add something, but in our comp plan, rethink and redesign, we've got to avoid unnecessary resource use in waste by designing waste out. So I suppose in some ways we think it's kind of a need, because let's design waste out within the drinking water, so whether it's covered already in there, but I'll just throw that out.
I think, and I think, we took David Cunliffe in that session about how branding and language, I'm being very semantic about this, that refuse is not a word that is used commonly. And I think if we were going to educate people, getting them aware of that word as an option, and I really respect the redesign and design things to become, the waste to become redundant. I think that's a really, really good point. But can we somehow, even in the education side of it, bring that word refuse in?
Yeah, through that understanding.
Used to have it on the peninsula.
Quite a powerful term,
It is. I mean, people laughed at Tāpika when they said, little town in South Island said, we're not going to have plastic bags in our town. And people were like, we're going to achieve that. And now we all trot off to the supermarket with our shopping bags. So
I guess where we sit on this now is that, and you all know my passion for achieving really good results on this. We're going through a period of 4 weeks of public consultation. We will get lots of feedback. We will get lots of input. We'll have lots of thoughts of our own as councillors. Probably my feeling is that the bulk of this discussion should happen once we've got that feedback and once we've got that public consultation process through. Then we can put it into the final shape. So I agree 100% with what Deli's saying. I'm sort of holding everything back now until we go through that process, because I'm really keen to see what communities have to say.
I think we should be aspirational, though. I think we should signal to our community that that's top of mind for us.
I think it's a really good point. Thank you.
Sorry, Martin.
Yeah, just wanted to, in support of what Dali said around the refuse, and I get, Len, how you're saying about, well, it's going out for consultation, but I feel very strongly that we need to have that refuse as part of that. Yes, we can wait until after we get the submissions and all the rest of it, but if then we're going to make any significant changes, we run the risk of saying, well, you didn't consult on that. And the refuse runs all the way from, when I bought a shirt yesterday, I said, do you want it in a bag? I said, no, I carried it out and put it in my car. All the way from that to council buying a whole lot of new furniture, but arriving in a truck and it's all triple wrapped in polystyrene and packing and all sorts of stuff. So there's a huge, the refuse is something that people can do within their own lives, but it's also something within our procurement that we can say, hey, don't bother, wrapping this in 10 layers of stuff, because otherwise we just get it and then we throw it in the bins out the back and people drive around the back and look at all that stuff that counts. So I think it has to become like Kaikoura with the no rubbish and other small towns starting the plastic bag thing. It has to become this is what TCDC is doing. We're refusing to accept unnecessary packaging and waste because we don't want to, it's expensive to have to deal with it. So I very strongly want refuse mentioned in
it's cultural, isn't it? It's creating a culture and promoting that through our comms.
Just to respond to that through the chair, I totally understand the direction that we're receiving from councillors at the moment and respect that, and there are some helpful there. I suppose my only nervousness about the refuse is it's also like refuse, and so the last thing we want to have is like refuse at the top, and so whether we can come up with a better term, and again that might be a reason rather than do it here now. That might be a reason to pick up on the mayor's points about picking up on some of the valuable information that's going to come back from our public when we go through our consultation, and then refining and coming up with different terminology and make sure we actually have that strongly in the documentation. as per the councillor request. Again, just throw that out there to the group, from the councillors to, as a possible way forward.
Thank you, Bruce.
In the same way, I think it would be good for it to be absolutely clear to public that, well, this proposal has got a price tag of $6 million between now and 2029, so that they are reading that in the same way as they're understanding what the aspiration is, so they understand that this proposal has a cost to it over between now and 2029, and an additional, whatever it is, 5.5 million or something in the subsequent.
Yes, I just make a couple of comments, and I support what's been spoken with Ellie and Martin. The WMMP is intended to be a guiding document for the council to promote and achieve effective and efficient waste management and minimisation within their district. I was part of the 2017 WMMP that we put together in that period, and I was taken to task quite strongly at the end of that about what we've done, and we've done very little. And I had to take it on the chin and think, well, we didn't get that right. We just said what we're going to say and didn't do it. Do you feel there's enough commentary on this here, this document, for the communities to see that there is going to be opportunities for them to be involved with waste minimisation and recovery?
Through the chair, I do think that. The other point I'd make, just to reference your first comment, is that there's definitely some things we didn't manage to achieve out of the 2017 WMP. But I probably wouldn't go as strongly as what you said, Councillor Walker, but with respect. I did go through and have a look at that probably a year or so ago at what we'd achieved, because again, we were getting some comments from councillors at the time that we hadn't achieved, we'd achieved very little out of that. It's the 2017 one. We actually did achieve quite a lot of stuff. We did a terrible job of actually communicating that, and the elected members and the public know about the things we had achieved. And yes, there were other things to achieve, more aspirational stuff that, in hindsight, 2020, we could have, as an organisation, worked harder on. So I agree with what you're saying, but I wouldn't be too hard on ourselves about that. I do think there's enough in here around groups. The other thing I'd say to you, and I know that we have some really passionate community groups out there that approach elected members, and I totally respect and understand the pressure that you feel from those community groups when they're coming to you. And that's their right, and I'll do that. What I would say as elected members is that we work very closely, or we work quite hard with those community groups, particularly Anna and the team. And so my advice to elected members, if I can be so bold as to offer it, is to try and get those community groups to come back to start and keep working with us. And if they're working with us and we're not doing, we're not responding, or we're not doing it, then the option is always to come to elected members and say, what's happening with the staff? That's part of the process, that's part of the model, totally understand that. But Anna does, the 13 work very hard with those community groups.
So my question's around, in the draft, are you happy that that information is in there when it goes out for
So I think there's information in there about groups. There's not going to be the same level of detail about exactly how we do it and how we do work with the groups. So again, that might be something that we look at bringing into it as part of the submission process when we firm it up for the final. If that's the kind of feedback we're getting from community groups about we can't see ourselves in the document, then that's definitely something we can look at if we get that feedback from the community groups. And again, a lot of it can be around how we do our communications about these things. So again, a strategy, the WMP is a strategy, so it needs to be broad enough that it allows us the freedom to do all the things that we want to do. So underneath the WMP, there's going to be more implementation of how we actually do all these things.
It's a guiding document, isn't it?
It is, correct, as you correctly said. So, yeah, so it's a bit of a mix and match around this document, other plans we have, communications that we have, all those kind of things, and making sure that we're walking the talk with these community groups.
So we'll hear from Robin and then Margaret tonight.
So my question was relating to the goals, objectives and targets, because I see that some of the targets that we've got, for example, 4.1, measure annually the curbside and RTS services. So we already have a non-performance financial report that comes to us. Are we able to, as much as possible, lump those targets into that reporting mechanism so that we're able to keep an eye on that all the time? Or is there going to be a separate reporting mechanism for this strategy to say, our goal is this? Because that sort of might address some of Terry's concerns, is that we will then be able to not sit back in 6 years and go, oh, crap, we didn't do that. Whereas actually we can just keep an eye on it the whole time and sort of adjust as we go.
So through the chair, I'd say that LTP, as we talked about, LTP is the time to change the non-financial performance measures. So
exactly.
So again, that's the councillors, direction as far as you say we want to try and capture more of these WP targets into our non-financial LTP measures. I don't see why we can't do that. There's going to be a level of common sense or reasonableness as far as we can't load. We don't load everything in. We don't want a massive load of stuff in solid waste and then do the same with the other activities. But I think there's a point where you kind of try and get that balance, and get some of these key ones in.
Well, in the previous LTP, we tweaked some of the measures that weren't proceeding exactly with what the information that we wanted to know. So I guess the takeaway from what you're saying is that we have an opportunity to look at our waste management strategy. We've got an opportunity to look at the LTP and see where they dovetail to give us the information that we want to make decisions further down the line.
Yep, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yes, good morning, Mayor and Councillor. Just to pick up on Councillor Walker's comment about the 2017 planning and this one. I think something we all need to be conscious of is resourcing, internal resources to be able to deliver to the plan. If there's one learning we can take between 2017 and this one, that's one thing I would take. So while we get the plan approved and there's a lot of actions, we just need to make sure we do the people to do it.
Thank you, Mo. I guess my comment to that would be the 2017 plan was very clear about the partnership between community groups who were working independently and the collaboration between community groups and council. Where you saw that really strong collaboration, which was Coromandel and Thames, you saw some very good results. Where there was no community group active, it's probably the biggest example because of the building activity, the things were going backwards. Volumes were going up because of the volumes of building waste and the byproducts of building waste, like we've had discussions with master builders about plastic wrap around framing and packets of timber. So the 2017 plan was quite clear, and Terry and Sally did a lot of work on including the community groups in there. But where council has limited resources, but has also community groups not active in those areas, it's going to be very difficult to achieve those targets. What has changed now is the ramp up in activity of community groups, and Anna's worked really, really strongly, and you have as well, Mo and Bruce, alongside the Whitianga group. And as soon as that transfer station in Whitianga gets up and running, you'll see some pretty good results fairly quickly, I think. And if those activities can be networked across the district, then the targets that need to be achieved will start to happen because of that strong collaboration, which was always there in the plan. It's in this plan, but it has to be actively enabled, and that's the difference. That's what's happening now. So as we see that, the only thing missing out of this that I would like to comment on is, or the question that I would ask is, what actions are there underway for processing of food and organic wastes within district as opposed to waste management at Turitea? And I know it's a difficult one, but are there options, are there organisations out there that are able to work with council to look at processing organic wastes within district as opposed to trucking them out of district?
Yep, so through the chair, that moving into all the getting into too much detail, we've got no issue with that. In a spoken with waste management, they're 100% behind supporting if we can have something happening locally within our district. That's no issue. I suppose what we would say is some of the point that you just made about the community groups is we would need a community group who is committed to doing that, to step forward and produce a very credible plan about how they were going to do it. Resource consent, all that kind of stuff. So it's not it seems like an easy thing because you compost at home, but if you're doing it on a bigger scale, we've got to be so careful. And I've spoken about this before, you know, with other councils who've done composting out of like food waste and organics, and the challenges that they've had around resource consent conditions and complying with them and odour and all those things. So again, not to be the voice of negativity, just reality. We just need to make sure that we go on with our eyes wide open, but there's nothing to stop that happening. So there's no intention by staff to not come and move forward in that direction. Our contractors are very happy to work with community groups, work with us. So yeah, no issues there at all.
Thank you. Mo, sorry, just ask Mo to just add to that. Come to you too.
Yeah, just a quick comment to what Joe said. In terms of operating the facility, the options there to look at it. But the one thing I would recommend to council is to revisit this in about 12 to 18 months' time. The reason I say that is the new solid waste contract starts in September. And in about 12 to 18 months, we have a good set of data that we can make an informed choice. Like, for example, the uptake on food waste, what kind of uptake are we getting? And is there appetite for other things? And then we can adjust our approach accordingly. The other piece to be mindful of, it's an opportunity really. The waste minimization plan was only signed off under legislation. We can review the plan and update it at any time. There's no impediment to do that. So then the opportunities are there that we can use. We just a timely thing.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Sorry, can I just say that the only impediment is resourcing it.
Resources. Yeah, we've had groups already step up and say, you know, they're actually doing food waste now on a reason 100 houses only, but to understand the next stage of it, how do they engage? Are they expecting you to come forward and asking, or are you looking for them to step up and talk to you?
So through the chair, my view would be really looking for them to step up and talk to us, which I believe the Parliamentary group are already, you know, they've already been working with Anna on a number of things. And, and again, I think the Parliamentary group with their 100 houses is the perfect example of how to do a little pilot, see if you can get things going, you know what I mean? Build a case, take some learning from that, you know, think about how you could grow that up to something a bit bigger, come and talk to, you know, to my team about how we do that. So, yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you. The other part of this resolution is the wording of the
vision.
Yeah, the 4 options.
The wording of the vision statement.
I'll pick 4.
Do we have some thoughts and comments on the vision statement?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I like number 4, mainly because it's got the word community in it, really. That's the only thing. All the rest is sort of the same. I think people are starting to figure out what circular economy is, the world and so on. But I like the idea of how that includes community and statement. That's me.
Thank you, Terry. So page 34. Do we have any other thoughts about the vision statement? Are we ready to adopt the vision statement for this today? Number 4 it is. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I feel like perhaps we may have done a disservice in sort of saying we want the word circular economy there. Great concept, yes. I feel like we may have just sort of hamstrung stuff a little. To me, a vision's got to be really short, really punchy. Those 2 examples below really excite me. And even if I was in Hodaki, I would take towards out and just go zero waste together. Like, let's make something big and bold and let's make a statement and let's all work towards it. I know, I'm sorry. Anyway, I like number 2, if I was to pick one. But I would change the word towards to for. That's my input.
Thank you.
I agree with both of you. I think it needs to be punchier than number 4. I like number 4 otherwise. I would be actually inclined to take generating value for our community out of number 4. To have successful waste minimisation based on a circular economy benefiting our environment. Because yeah, number 4 is nice, but it's too big. It's I think it's just too much.
Councillor Walker, how do you feel about that? Since you-
Oh, fine, me, I just like the word community, that's all I was interested in.
Yeah, I do too.
So I would go back to that. And I would say taking out based on a circular economy and say generating value for our community and benefiting our environment. Because
So the geek that I am, I've spent my summer up and down the North Island asking random strangers on the street what they think of as circular economy. You've got a new insight into my life and the poor life of my child. No, but I have been canvassing a sort of a wider range of people that I wouldn't ordinarily talk to about, oh, well, you know, what do you understand by the term circular economy? I'm banned from small towns. But actually, I think that there was a rather large understanding across a broad range of people that I spoke to about what circular economy meant and the aspirations. And I note that actually when we did our own consultation on this, and we had 550 people respond to that consultation, 46% of them put circular economy as either a number one priority or number two priority. So in our community and the people that we're making this vision for, or that we're proposing this vision for consultation with, and people understand the phrase circular economy. So I'd like to keep it in there and boot out the generating value. But those are just my thoughts.
I guess I have a concern at the moment that within the framework of this meeting, we've gone back into a fairly detailed discussions about the vision statement, which I think we spent a couple of hours on last time. I'm not really happy to do that.
In which case, I think number one is the shortest and punchiest.
So I guess what I would ask is, do you want to park the decision on the vision statement for today?
This is not going to rock the world, it's just some words.
I'll be guided by you.
I'll go with Rika. We'll do the Rika thing.
I like.
Go Rika, go.
which, no,
You do it.
I had flip flops around all
I like
over.
the word economy in there, but as long as the word's economy.
I'm jumping in
community.
Elliot, number one.
Number one here, number one there.
Our Coromandel takes action towards the
Circular economy.
And it's also got our Coromandel, so it's got that sense of community in there as well.
You can put our communities take actions towards circular economy and sustainable future. Coromandel communities?
Our.
Got to have the word our on it.
Got to have our.
Our communities? You like that?
No.
Doesn't need to be Coromandel, because Coromandel's only a town. It's not the whole peninsula. Yeah, I know, it's a good town.
We could grab the whiteboard and start running.
Stay away from the whiteboard.
Okay, guys, are we doing this now? Or
Yeah,
are we
we're doing this now.
Put it to bed.
I want it in the plan.
No, I'd like our communities take action towards a circular economy and sustainable future.
I could live with that.
Okay.
Our communities, again, please.
Our communities taking action towards a circular economy and sustainable future.
I prefer our Coromandel.
No, I don't care. Coromandel's just a town. There's a whole more than place. It's not Coromandel Peninsula.
This time Coromandel went back to its Māori name, in fact.
Okay, anyway, so
Let's just take it, taking action towards circular economy and sustainable future. Let's take the R out of it entirely.
we'll keep all the words in there. We're just changing one word.
Would you prefer we put our paradise coach there?
No,
So what do we have? Our communities taking action towards a circular economy
and sustainable future.
and a sustainable future.
And,
I'll look on that.
and
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm all groovy with
Yep.
that.
Robin, Ruby?
I want our Coromandel, not our community.
And Coromandel Town needs to be called Kapanga.
Yeah.
I ain't taking that argument.
Rebecca, how do you feel about that?
I could live with it.
Peter?
I'll abstain.
Gary?
Okay, with whatever the majority decide.
John?
Yes.
John G?
I'm okay.
Okay, Martin?
Being in the submission, yes, please.
So the only question mark is we've got our communities, should it be our communities or our Coromandel?
Okay, let's have a vote on that one, because that's an interest. I want our Coromandel.
Include Coromandel?
Yep.
Those in favour?
Don't have a problem.
We get there? Good.
So our Coromandel communities, at the end of the day, I'm not getting this tattooed on. Even though I
I'm
promised
giving a
it was
tattoo
3 words.
this week for.
That was the discussion with,
Back in here, we'll get-
so I'll go with the T-shirt, I'm not getting the tattoo. Our Coromandel community is taking action towards a circular economy and a sustainable future.
What did you just say then? Our Coromandel?
Our Coromandel community.
No, community.
Ooh,
No.
no,
So,
No, you're out.
Coromandel community is taking action towards a circular economy and a sustainable future.
That will do.
That's what's on the table.
Okay. I want a cup of tea, yes.
All those in favour?
Right.
Those against? Abstaining? Peter, I want that recorded? No.
Through the chair, is that fine?
Okay, so
Say, was it just for the vision statement?
that's just for the vision. The rest of the resolution stays as it is. Can I get a vote, please, on the rest of the statement? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried.
Well done, guys.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Alan. Good.
Thank you.
There's going to be any reviews. Just make sure that people are using it. That's how we can handle it.
So we now move to public excluded. Could I get a mover and a seconder to go to public excluded, please? Rebecca. We need to go through the process. I'm going to, sorry.
Can we do that?
Wanted to share that with everyone.
Can we get a cup of tea? Can we just have 2 minutes?
We have a cup of tea and a bicky while we